Okay, I think this is broadcasting, so that's cool. I think it's the appointed time, so that's cool. Suppose I could peek at my email and see if there's something going on here. All right, fine. But this YouTube video would have been better, like with less dead time at the beginning. But I'm trying to figure out why there's no viewers. That seems like an important thing. Nope. All right. Not sure what's going on, but I'm not worried about it. All right. Well, I guess without further ado, I should figure out how to share my screen here. Thanks. Whatever. Okay. Share screen. That one. Share. All right. Well, this session's supposed to be about MyUW. And if I go look at the description, we're going to have a survey of the components. We're going to talk about how it's backed by uPortal. We're going to do a demo. It's functional and about products. Okay. Very good. Hey, and I got 2 viewers now. That's awesome. Okay. So this is a session about the components that make up MyUW and why that's awesome. So, and there's a questions and answer module in here for whatever that's worth that might or might not help. Okay, so this is MyUW. What we've got is an alternative front end for uPortal that's implemented using AngularJS. So when it's still really uPortal under the hood. I can prove that by going back to the kind of classic mode for Madison, and this is the only mode for system. The traditional uPortal with tabs and columns and all that good stuff. But then we've got this redesigned new AngularJS front end, and that's the default landing screen when you come in on as a Madison user to the portal. And so this is a software module called AngularJS Portal. It's up on GitHub, and you can grab it. Free and open source software. And you point it at you deploy it alongside your uPortal. It integrates via the JSON web services out of uPortal. And ta-da, you get something like this. And so the features in AngularJS Portal are, it will render this landing page, this home screen, and there's a couple modes for this. The very simple mode where it just lists the things that you've added to your home, and the more interesting mode where it shows widgets, so you can associate chunks of dynamic content with these items. And then there's a directory of stuff where you can add more, and you can filter it, and you can search it, as long as by search you mean filter. And then for the things in here, you can add them to your home if you have the right permissions. You can launch them. And the things in the directory, they might be traditional JSR 286 portlets. They might just be links to external websites. They can be whatever they need to be under the hood. They might be a simple content portlet with a chunk of content that's going to be direct rendered. So anyway, you can favorite things in the directory. You can add them to your home so that you then have them. You can customize this, get rid of things you don't want, and of course, you can reorder these. Oops. So there we go, reordering things. And again, this is an alternative front end for uPortal. So under the hood, that is uPortal layout management. This is a special tab in your plain old DLM layout. So all the fancy tricks of defaulting content to different audiences using uPortal's layout management features and the graceful degradation based on permissions, all that fully applies. It's just instead of a tabbed column rendering, you get what is essentially just a list of items that's going to responsively rearrange depending on screen width. Ta-da, responsive. So again, AngularJS Portal as a module that's an alternative front end for your uPortal, and you got your ability to populate your home. You've got the directory of apps, which is a UI over the plain old portlet registry. Those are portlet definitions. And then we've got this lightweight notifications feature where there are notifications and they can be addressed to groups. And if you're in the group that matches the notification, you see it until you dismiss it. If you're permitted to, that's configurable per notification. And so I can undismiss these things and redismiss them. I can do this all day long. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so AngularJS Portal, alternative front end for uPortal, alternative landing page. It's doing what it can in this single page application way. So I go over here to browse. That wasn't a browser refresh. It was doing that single page application thing. This even goes further in that if I go find the WAM membership thing and launch that. That's direct rendered client side because that's just a simple content chunk of HTML. So there's really no reason to involve a JSR286 portlet in rendering that, and incur that server side hit. No need at all. Just direct render that client side. And so the strategy is really to have this AngularJS front end that's kind of going after that 80-20 of doing the most common things, certainly doing the initial things so that it's fast and responsive and beautiful. And then by all means, if you reach that point where you want to exercise a JSR286 portlet, MyUW is heavily invested in existing JSR286 portlets for things like PeopleSoft integration. And so, by all means, when that's your need, you can go ahead and render the real portlet. And so at this point, we're back in plain old uPortal rendering a portlet maximized. So that's the strategy, is to rely on the traditional portlet rendering pipeline to render portlets maximized and to rely on the new front end for that initial landing page, for that dashboard experience, for the directory of apps, for notifications, for the kind of frameworky things that are most common. So the point of this session, this Hangout, is to think of this as product, as modules that are available in the world and interesting. And so what this is the AngularJS Portal module sitting out in GitHub. And what you get in here is the AngularJS functionality that's rendering this front. And then there's also this handy mock directory that mocks out the uPortal web services. So in production for real, one points this thing, or in a more rigorous test environment, you set this out next to a uPortal instance, and it's talking to real uPortal JSON web services that are backed by a real database, and doing things for real. But of course, in a development environment, depending what you're developing and what you're demoing, there may be no need for all that complexity, and you can just point it at some static JSON files, thanks. And those static files are sitting here in this mock directory so that you're able to do that. And so then down here in the README, there's instructions on getting going in these different ways. Whether you're going to run the mock, without having to have a uPortal instance and without that, or if you're going to deploy it for real next to a uPortal instance. So that's my segue into widgets. So optionally associated with these portlet registrations are chunks of markup of AngularJS template, and optionally pointing it as a web service to make a widget. So you can associate optionally these widgets with the portlets. And to the extent that you do that, and users add them to their home, and they choose the expanded mode instead of the compact mode, then they can see custom, portlet-specific markup, item-specific markup sitting in that box, provide this kind of dashboard experience. Maybe tell you the most important thing about the different items. So handy access, the thing you probably want about payroll information is to go look at your latest earning statements. The professional development thing is just a search integration, so that's probably what you want to do there, and so forth and so on. For each one, getting to think about what is the most important thing this module has to say, or the most valuable links it can offer, if any, and surface those right there. And so this ends up being a lighter weight way of developing and delivering these little vignettes. And there's this lovely tool for developing these suckers. So where is it? Widget creator, bam. So all that these are, this is what's so cool about this, is there's a chunk of template, and optionally there's some JSON that it's going to grab, maybe from a URL in the real world. But for development purposes, you just mock this stuff up and hit refresh, and bam, you're off to the races rendering these things. And so there's this nice tool for developing this stuff, and then ultimately these become data, metadata that's associated with a portlet definition in uPortal. And where do we shove data about portlets? Well, we shove them in portlet preferences. Just that's the tradition. Fair enough. So all this is more metadata on the portlet definition that captures this template, captures maybe some information on where to get the JSON. And so writing just this much code, just a template, and of course whatever it is that's going to provide the necessary JSON, if any, you come out the other end with dynamic content that can go in the box. And so that's how all of these items are developed, are delivered. Is each one of these is a little chunk of HTML templating, with the placeholders in that template being fulfilled by values from a JSON feed in the cases where they're dynamic. And it turns out that's all you need to implement some pretty interesting functionality across different domains. Whether we're going to tell students about the status of their scholarship applications, or whether we're going to, what's the most interesting to do about the directory widget? Well, the ability to go look something up in the directories, the functionality to surface, or whatever. You could pull in an RSS feed. There's a concept of templates, so it can get even better than having to have a custom handcrafted HTML template associated with each one. If what you want to do is fulfill a pattern where it's just a list of links, in fact, you don't have to associate this markup with that entry because there's a type for that, and so at that point, all you're doing is providing the JSON that fulfills the the data that's unique and special to this particular item. Whoa, that's a mouthful. So, so you come out the other end of that, and what have we got here? We've got this AngularJS portal, alternative front end for uPortal, free and open source software. You can grab this sucker, plop it down next to your uPortal, and now you have this option by simply going to the URL to deploy that. And what is it doing? It's providing an alternative approach to what you get on that initial landing in uPortal. What you get is a single stream of favorited items of things that you've captured to your homepage. Optionally with dynamic content associated with some of them, and then it's a snappy view on the registry of stuff, complete with ability to surface some details about these things, and to go ahead and launch these things after you've found them in the directory and decided that this is something that you want to launch. And all that's gated by plain old uPortal permissions, right? So this, am I allowed to add it to my home? Well, that's the same permission as always in uPortal in terms of whether you're allowed to subscribe to that item of content. Am I able to launch this? Well, it's that same permission. So this is permission reflecting the uPortal permissions, and that's kind of the point of the story here, is that it's an alternative front end fronting and making use of the functionality in uPortal. And when you get to that point where you want to be rendering a portlet, or you need a portlet application, by all means, that's what launch is going to do for me here. Is it's going to bot me right over to uPortal to go ahead and render that portlet. Cool. So grab that code right there. And there's a bunch of fanciness in Google Hangouts where there's like this this showcase tool, and so I threw a link in that to the GitHub thing. Maybe that helps. But that's not all. So that's, I think, an important part of the story is this AngularJS portal front end that's implementing the home and search and browse and notifications. And this was, of course, the point of that kind of rendering pipeline branching stuff that went into uPortal. In MyUW specifically, we have some goofy logic about under what circumstances you go to the new thing versus the old thing, and that's how this switch, where I go back to classic, works. Is you can opt in and out of this. Of course, your local rules could be different in terms of how you decide where to send people down the rendering pipeline, whether it's a classic experience or this. The point is, there's technology for being able to pilot this as aggressively or as timidly as you're comfortable with, in terms of making it opt-in or only sending it to certain, having certain populations get it, or just adopting it wholesale. But not quite done yet. So another thing. So yes, this still supports portlets, and you can launch portlets, and you can render portlets, and all that's a good thing. But you may want to develop applications in a way that doesn't require building a JSR 286 portlet. And so there's this concept of what's called the frame. And in fact, AngularJS Portal is itself a frame-based application. So this is maybe the richest example of such a thing. But the idea is that you can grab and build on the frame, which starts out something like this, to build your application. And then, hey, look, it looks like Portal. It looks like it belongs in the portal. So we can give users the experience of an application that's part of the portal without it having to be a JSR 286 portlet. So it doesn't have to run in one giant JVM necessarily. And there's an example of that. So one example of this is this application for registering emergency contact information. There's an admin side to this that I'm not going to show for obvious reasons. But here I am with my own kind of example dummy data. The point is, this is a way to build applications using AngularJS that can really just be a WAR file, be a JSR 286 WAR. They can run as a servlet application. They wouldn't even necessarily have to be running in the same Tomcat with the portal. This whole modern container architecture is a good idea. And yet it looks like, it feels like it's part of the portal. From a user experience perspective, I'm still, quote unquote, in the portal. This is a portlet in that sense. It just technologically doesn't have to be developed and delivered that way. And so at this point, all the AngularJS goodness applies in terms of building a dynamic web application with components that show and hide and validate, and are dynamic. So, why am I way more nervous than I thought I was going to be doing this? Anyway, so this too is free and open source software up on GitHub. And so it's another component, another module available in the set of stuff that someone can grab as a starting point for developing applications in this way. And there's some cute stuff going on here where there's the frame, and there's also this app seed, which is kind of a hello world-ish starting point example of making use of the frame. So you got different options to latch onto depending on what kind of starting point you want to have. But the punchline is that this code's available. And so with the frame, you can build applications that look like they are part of this new portal look and feel experience, that feel like they belong. And with the AngularJS portal component, you get a specific such application that delivers some specific features of rendering the user's landing page, of supporting those different widgets, of supporting notifications, and of providing an alternative search and browse kind of experience over the registry of stuff. But that's not all. So in this approach, in this architecture, what we've really got is AngularJS on the front and JSON web services in the back. And some of those web services are being provided directly by uPortal, and that's convenient because the intended way of adopting this is you plop your AngularJS portal WAR file next to your uPortal WAR file, and so they're on the same server, and so the whole cross-site scripting thing is all happy, and the AngularJS portal front end is able to call the JSON web services out of uPortal to go get the user's layout and go get the registry of stuff. And life is really very good. But to get really interesting, you need to be able to deliver widgets, applications that depend on web services coming from elsewhere. And that's where this REST proxy comes in. Boom. So this is, and if you're in an environment where you can do cores, then maybe you want to do that instead. But if you're in an environment where what you really want to be doing is proxying, selectively and carefully proxying JSON web services through your portal server so that those web services can be consumed by an AngularJS front end that experiences those services as coming from the portal, so there's no cross-site scripting concerns from the browser's perspective. Great, that's what this REST proxy module is doing for you. It's a very simple server-side JSON proxy. And so this is really cool. This enables things like this email widget being really simple. So on the portal side, all there is to make a widget is a template pointed at a JSON web service that's going to serve up this metadata of what accounts are relevant to me. So I can navigate this pull down, pick which one to launch, and it's very cool. But of course, to deliver that, there has to be something interesting server side, and it happens to be the case that that's not the portal team's responsibility around here. That's a different team. That a different team really has the access and expertise and authority over what is true about my access to email accounts. So you can get to a really sensible architecture where that other team is serving up the web service that answers this question of, for this user, what are the email accounts available to that user, say, and then the portal REST proxy is configured to proxy that so that that JSON web service is then available to this chunk of markup, this widget that is running in the browser. And so that's how a widget like this works. It's a little chunk of simple markup, a template that's dynamic that has placeholders for each email account added to the pull down, and then it's pointed at the REST proxy, which is configured to proxy the JSON web service out of the team that is actually able to answer the question for that widget. And so this is a really neat pattern that then you can repeat over and over and over in different ways. JSR286 portlets are a thing. They exist. We're invested in them. And there's such a thing as resource URLs. So sometimes the place to get your JSON web services is out of a resource URL that apparently glitched at this particular moment. But anyway, the HRS portlets are able to expose JSON that the corresponding widgets can then consume, or it can be a JSON service, out of a third-party server, out of a different server than the portal server. And so you look at something really neat like this is production, so I can't show that. It's not in production yet. Haha. Something really neat like this scholarships widget, where scholarships seem like they're a really important thing, and there's a whole external to the portal website and web application that's really the full experience about that, and there is no need to rebuild that. That is a perfectly fine thing. That, in fact, it seems is the right piece of architecture to be serving up, to be the authority about scholarships data. So you get that component to serve up a JSON web service representing this data. You proxy that web service through the portal so that a portal front end can consume it from the portal, and then a simple chunk of AngularJS template of markup running in this widget, down in the browser, is able to pull that web service and render based on it. Because I am a boring staff member, I don't have any scholarships, but if I was an exciting student who did have upcoming deadlines, then the widget would reflect that and possibly help me to connect with some resources to fund my education, which would in fact be really cool. So what do we got? We got the AngularJS portal front end with a handful of kind of the basic features that you want to have when you land in the portal. We've got some technology for associating chunks of dynamic content with some of these items. We've got some technology for proxying the backing JSON web services that make these dynamic items much more interesting because they're able to display interesting data, be informed by interesting data. And then when you want to go beyond the dashboard, beyond the little widget, beyond the landing page and associated with the portal into a full application, we've got a new way of developing applications that provides an alternative to JSR 286 portlets, that provides a way to develop an application that looks and feels like it belongs as part of this portal, without having to run inside the portlet container and be in the giant servlet container. And I think that's what we got. So that's the kind of overall summary of what's going on here. And there ought to be, this Q&A feature looks like it's a dud, but there's, I actually don't know how to get any feedback out of this Hangout, which is weird. So maybe the thing to do will be to follow up on the email list and discuss there, sharing this recording, and given what's available in these modules, what of this would be worth a more technical, deeper dive to follow up on and see where to go next with this. But the summary, the point of the story, again, is that this is real, currently in production, available software, and the adoption path to try this out is you grab AngularJS portal, you plop it down next to uPortal, and you now have a new alternative front end for your portal, implementing the features that you see in MyUW. Great. Well, no need to make this any longer than it had to be. I'll go ahead and end this thing, and we'll try to get some value out of the recording and kind of go from there. Hope that sounds good. I wonder how I do that.